On July 2nd, police say Krist Roker was found shot dead at Adams Park. After an investigation, Jason Jers, Natalie Hudson, and Patrick Robinson were arrested in the case. Now, police say Carrie Yemens is facing.
It was a cloudy day on July 2nd as I drove down the highway to my destination without a care in sight when my phone rang abruptly, signaling for me to pick it up. I went into shock as the news resonated with me that my brother was gone and I would never see him again. This is the story of Krist Roker, aka Slick P. We start on August 16, 1986. The birth of Krist meant he was one of 3 siblings born and raised in Queens, New York. Krist made his way to the South in 2003, where he looked to be on the right path, but things soured once he got established in Spartanburg, SC. You cannot blame others for your actions and should be held accountable for them, and Krist definitely was. Krist pursued a life of crime where the prison gates became a revolving door. I have always said that prison makes you a better criminal, but Christ could never get it right. Around 2017, Krist was amongst the 21 people arrested following a human trafficking operation. Investigators and Homeland Security Investigations conducted an undercover operation to identify and assist victims of human trafficking. This operation was conducted by utilizing undercover investigators who communicated with females engaged in the commercial sex trade, officials said in the release. An exchange of commercial sex for money was agreed upon, and the females came to a prearranged location. The females were taken into custody where they were interviewed. Krist was charged with prostitution, possession with intent to distribute heroin, possession of meth, and unlawful carry of a firearm. 15 people were charged with prostitution, and 6 people were charged with solicitation of prostitution. Krist did a short stint and was released on probation. The following year, in 2018, the Union County Sheriff's Office arrested 3 Spartanburg men on multiple drug charges, including trafficking heroin and distributing methamphetamine. According to a sheriff's office, Charles Jason Lawson, 44, Krist Roker, 31, and Jason Randall Jers, 28, were arrested on Monday for having a large quantity of illegal drugs. Remember the name Jers, as it will come up again later. A sheriff's office narcotics officer learned that an informant had been contacted in an attempt to sell the informant a quantity of drugs, and an undercover then arranged the purchase of heroin and methamphetamine at a location near Cedar Grove Road in the county. According to the release, the purchase had been made with Jers. Several undercover officers set up surveillance of the location and saw a Chevy Tahoe with 3 people inside. The undercover then purchased the heroin and meth from Jers and then left the scene. As the 3 people left in the Tahoe and turned onto Cedar Grove Road, deputies conducted a traffic stop. All 3 men were handcuffed and detained as the vehicle was searched. The search revealed 2 marijuana plants growing in a black pot, a small bag of marijuana beside the driver's side center console, several plastic baggies, and scales. Jers, Lawson, and Krist were arrested and charged with trafficking heroin, distribution of meth, manufacturing marijuana, and possession of marijuana. According to Sheriff's Office officials, all 3 suspects were charged with trafficking heroin because the amount purchased was more than 4 grams. Krist was on probation at the time, and this was a clear violation of the agreement, so he was sent back to prison to finish his sentence. After his release, Krist began hanging out with Jason Jers and some other shady characters after burning bridges with family members and friends he grew up with. Krist started seeing a woman whom no one approved of and was told to leave her alone by his younger brother, which went into one ear and out the other. This is what led to his demise. Krist was good friends with Jers, but had a falling out over an alleged car that belonged to Jason's girlfriend, Natalie Hudson. Jason started making calls to Krist's family members and others, threatening to do harm to Krist if he didn't return his girlfriend's car. For months, Jason plotted to set Krist up, but was unsuccessful, and when the baiting didn't work, Jason came up with a plan to involve others. Jason went to the house of Krist's ex-girlfriend. There, they came up with the plot to lure him to a park which Krist and his ex-girlfriend frequented. I am not sure when the 4th suspect, Patrick Robinson, was brought into the mix, but the 4 of them, Jason Jers, Natalie Hudson, Carrie Yeomans, and Patrick Robinson, loaded up a car with tarp tape and a gun in order to kidnap, beat, and torture Krist. On July 2nd, officers were anonymously called to Adams Park in reference to a shooting incident. Upon arrival, they found a man not breathing and with a gunshot wound to the head. The victim was identified as 37-year-old Krist Roker. That afternoon, Krist received a call from Carrie, who told him to meet her at the park, and I am sure she was very persuasive because he agreed to meet. The other 3 suspects drove around to the back entrance of the park where the 2 men, Jers and Robinson, got out and entered the wooded area of the park. Natalie Hudson was the getaway driver, so she remained parked and ready to speed off once Krist was thrown into the trunk of the car. As Krist met with Carrie while engaging her in conversation, did not see the 2 men come out of the woods. No one knows what was said except for the parties involved. An argument ensued which led to Krist being shot under the chin with an exit wound through his head. As Krist lay there bleeding to death, Carrie went into his pockets and gathered up whatever he had and took off. The other 2 men took off through the woods and jumped in the car, which sped off to an unknown location. Feeling guilty, Carrie made an anonymous phone call to the police department. When the police got there, they found Krist unresponsive and not breathing with a gunshot wound to the head. Krist leaves behind a son and daughter and will forever be missed. While all suspects have been captured, there is nothing that will bring him back. We will continue to cover the trial in other episodes. Be careful, the life you lead can lead you to murder in the park, my brother's keeper.